Dan,
Yo,
how you feeling, brother?
feeling alright? Thanks for having me.
Of course.
Yeah.
It hasn't been too long since I saw you.
No.
About 15 hours, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I work out with Dan. We used to do Monday through Saturday, right? We started
Yeah.
Monday through Saturday,
Yeah.
and we figured that the Saturdays were going to be tough because we got kids. But you, sir, have played a very integral role in my life because you got some type of energy and mindset that I gravitate to at all times. And I know you know exactly what I'm talking about,
I appreciate that.
right?
Thanks.
So you have that go-getter driven point A to point B. I'm going to get it done. It's going to hurt, but it's going to get done, right?
Yep.
And that mindset, even when you attended my group classes, even when, we talk about, our personal lives and goals and things like that, and, your ambition to learn, your ambition to know, those things are always so flattering to me. So you've had something that I've always, I like that energy, and I don't think I've quite investigated it with you
Alright.
in detail. We haven't kind of had a sit down like this where we chat and we feel free outside of the gym constraint or time. So tonight I want that to be an opportunity for that. Okay.
Fantastic.
So my brother, we got something here. We're gonna go ahead and cheer it up and then get this thing started. Now, first question of the day, sir. It's not gonna be an easy one because I'm gonna pull something from the history of you and I. Okay. So I remember one time you came to the gym. And I don't recall what exactly we were talking about, but you said it's all about figuring out who I am. I don't know if you recall it.
That sounds like me.
It sounds like
Yeah.
you, right?
Yep.
So you're like the journey, this whole thing that's happening. You gotta kind of figure yourself out, and unless you figure it out, there's a whole lot of cloud and things that are going on in your head, and you're going through the motions. It feels like you're working towards something, but you don't quite know that thing because you still there's still some questions that are left unanswered. Is that how you feel, sir?
Yep.
I feel the same way. So when you said that, you had to say no more for me to know that this man, we gotta talk, cause we're thinking on some vibes. So language is always a hint, or of course of how we feel. I mean, that's how we express ourselves to people.
Right.
But sometimes language is very inefficient in expressing the thoughts, the intricacies of thoughts and emotions that we have going on in our minds. Is that correct? Would you agree to that?
Yep.
Fantastic. So you said finding who I am. That supposes that there is a destination or there's a prescribed Dan sitting somewhere waiting to be uncovered. Is that true?
I'm not sure if I will put it that way. In a sense that there is a final form of yourself that is, solid and set in stone, right? I think it's discovering who I am means, unlocking the potential to do certain things, and things that I can, interrelate in life and make me a better person. Not necessarily that, who I am holistically, but, figuring out all of these things that can be part of me, who I am. I always had this need of, like you said, this ambitious for learning. I always want to learn different things and want to be good at different things. And then in the process of doing that, it helps a lot you to navigate between these, different skills or learning process in your life. And you start figuring out what are the things that you're good at, how you make the best out of it. And that's what I mean about finding who I am. It's just unlocking those notches of potential. Right?
So I understand it. So, and I thought about it quite a bit. So it sounds like in the discovery of who you are, it's really about what you can be.
Yeah.
So now the question has
it
changed
is.
from who, which seems very ambiguous, to what. So now let me ask you the question. Is the attainment of what you are or what you can be the realization of who you are?
That's subjective, because first of all, usually these things, they don't have a very real metric or a very objective metric, right?
Emotion can be a metric. How you feel internally.
Right. But how you feel internally at about something at some point in time will change later in the future, right? And
Might.
then maybe, by the time that you went from A to B, you said that I like to pursue the A to B, but every time you get to B, your reference has changed. And you're always looking for a point C somehow, either vertically or horizontally, however it is, But your reference changes. So what is the attainment? I don't know if
The
you can
attainment
actually
is the
cross the
perpetual.
line.
The attainment is the perpetual journey. The perpetual journey of betterment. The perpetual journey of saying, "Oh, I want to be." You're staying on that track. Could that possibly be it?
Yeah, I guess that the ability to put yourself to learn and evolve over time, as such that every day you can look back on the day before and say, I'm a little better than I was then. And the ability to do that, that's probably what the attainment maybe, as you put.
Is the realization of that ability, or is the manifestation of that ability a realization of who you are? If I go and I say, you know what, man, everything I decided to put my mind to do, I've done it so many times that I know that when I put my mind to something, I can do it. Because I am this being who can do things.
Huh.
Once I attain that mindset, once I convince myself that I have that mindset, is that essentially saying, oh, this is who I am? Because remember, in saying that statement, it's a declaration. It's saying, I can do everything that I set my mind to. That is a description of who you are. That is you're stating an attribute of who you are.
So in this journey, not only you find out your potentials and the things that you can progress and evolve, but more importantly, you start becoming more aware. Okay, you start becoming more aware of who you are, and not only okay.
I'm uncomfortable when you say who you are, because we still haven't established yet whether or not who you are is a destination, right? Because in our conversation we're saying that, oh, you may. So I don't know when you say who you are, what do you mean precisely?
So I mean like actually becoming more aware of your strengths and your weaknesses, being able to recognize the things that you've been defeated, and learning and maturing yourself overall. So it's an overall awareness of who you are, really, because we grow up with so many insecurities, and then I guess obviously this is not quantifiable in any shape or form for individuals, but we all have some sort of a handful of insecurities and doubts, and that as you are in this journey of, especially when you start pursuing things, when you start provoking some change in your life, you start being able to see more clearly, everything that makes you, and then you start becoming more comfortable, with the insecurities and whatever it is, and yeah, that's how I.
So I guess in finding out who you are, you then know that you are this person who knows their insecurities, dispels their insecurities, learns their strengths and weaknesses. Is that what you'd say is around the ballpark of a description of who you are, or a realization of who you are?
Yeah, because then you start becoming more in peace with some things,
I vehemently disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Because I don't know why it is, but I'm hearing connotations of resignation. right? Anytime I accept something as a weakness, I'm essentially saying that, I mean, at what point is the barrier drawn? Because if I'm weak at something, to me, oh, I'm just starting that journey, and tomorrow I could be a little better and a little stronger.
But recognizing your weaknesses doesn't mean giving up on anything. You know.
No, I'm not saying you're giving up. I'm saying that even calling that a weakness is resignation. You could call it a work in progress. Like even that description of saying it's a weakness of mine. I guess maybe language at this point, maybe word language may be inefficient to describe what we're talking about. But
yeah.
I don't think I will ever sit there and say I'm weak at something. No, my mindset is this: is that this is something I could get good at. Okay, and can you imagine when I get good at this? I could be the best at it. Right? That mindset right there for me helps me. I like to believe that if there is a who I am, that person who had that voice is who I am. So, that's how I disagree.
Okay. We might not be talking about necessarily mutually exclusive things, but I guess that my point more was really maturing in a sense that you have more awareness of your potentials. And maybe weakness was too much of a strong word,
correct.
But things that we don't recognize in ourselves or we never realize that we're oblivious about, that might be causing more harm than good. So there are some characteristics of our personality that sometimes we refuse to see or accept that affect your life and affect others, and you don't realize it. And then as you grow and as you start like I said, provoking some change, it puts you off balance. And when you get out of your comfort zone, you're in a better position to look at yourself and become more aware.
Okay.
And that's how has been my experience. And I'm not saying that this is
universal.
I'm just saying that this is how I've been experiencing life,
okay.
Especially at this time in my life.
And I no, what you're saying is not something that. There are parts where it describes. One thing I'm trying to do tonight is I'm trying to relate to you as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Also, when there's a contrast that is drawn between our personalities, I also embrace that a lot because then you're providing me with a whole new perspective and you're enriching my experience. So yeah, when you say things that I disagree, I actually embrace it, but I'm ultimately looking for agreement. And when we agree, we can kind of say, hey, Dan, our minds are fucked up. How do we figure it out together? You know what I mean? So that's ultimately what I'm trying to do.
Right.
But I've been thinking about this idea of limits a lot, right? The limits that we place upon ourselves or the limits that are placed upon our character that we don't even recognize.
Yeah.
So you said something that triggered it. And I was like, you said something, whether or not, a trait that I have is causing more harm than good. So I guess the assumption would be that if you have this particular trait that's causing more harm than good, then you might have to dispel it just for the convenience of everything else. Would that be a statement that you'd make?
No, but it's something for you to...
Or control?
I don't, some things you can't really control, but you can, try to become more aware of. Right.
So let's talk about the concept of awareness.
And then as you become more aware of, you can better navigate. Some things, are not that. It's not that you're hiding or suppressing. It's learning how to handle it.
That's control.
But it's not a forced control, because there's no way that you can rationalize. It's something that you're gonna have to experience over and over, and not just create like a rational plan on how to fix that.
So we're talking very abstractly right now, and it's very easy to get lost when things are abstract. So we're going to solidify all of this with concrete examples, okay? I'm going to start. So I'm going through a personal battle in my life right now where I'm trying to figure out how to interact with people the right way, whatever that may be. Because I tell you what, every morning I wake up, I have a very different feeling. And whatever feeling I have, that's what you're going to get. So your expectations of me might be that you might see me, what the hell is wrong with him? Oh, he's excited. Oh, wait. And then I want you to embrace me in all of those, because with you embracing me, then I've ultimately expressed myself and my being to the way I want to, right? I'm not having to judge my character or compromise my character to express myself. It seems like you have something to say, but let me finish this one.
Right.
So, an example. What if I have a conflict with somebody, say a disagreement with somebody, right? And I know that this person is just not seeing the way I see it, which I'm convinced it's not only correct, it's the objective way to look at it. That's a bias, you would say, still on my part. My whole nature is to convince the person that the way I'm looking at it typically is the objective and the fair way to look at it. And the person says, no. Because you do this and it made me feel this way, you're wrong. So, in a sense, I'm rendered helpless. Because now I have to appease you, but your standpoint is a point that is very subjective in nature and might not be the objective truth. We're still pretty abstract at this point, but I just want to warm us up so we can go on. So in that scenario, what do? Do I tell the person, and I have a tendency of expressing myself the way I feel and without pulling any punches. Suppose that I hurt such a person's feelings. I go home and I feel like shit that I hurt such a person's feelings. I'm asking myself, was the subject matter even that important for me to compromise a relationship or produce friction in a relationship? So now I'm feeling bad. But then that also comes at a penalty of censoring yourself, right? Because now I'm like, I didn't have an opportunity to express what I really believe, and now the judgment is totally on me. But the fact that I let my person down. How do you navigate such a line?
Well, okay. In this case, I think there's a lot. What you're saying is, a lot of blaming, right? And I think that this is a perfect example of the awareness thing, because the way that you're talking is as if the way you react to something, it's your own unique way that cannot change, and then that's how you feel that you should react freely. But there are a lot of things that we can learn and adapt and still react normally and naturally, but in a way that not only is just not offensive, and you're so concerned with that, but most importantly, when it comes to communication, what do you really want? You want effectiveness. So even though you know that the content that you have might be correct and your reasoning might be correct, you're obviously not conveying the message properly. It's not effective.
Thank you. I respect that. And
this is what I say. When you start becoming more aware, you can still be yourself in a more effective way. You're improving yourself. So once you start having those experiences, you are able to, crank up a notch. Obviously not in an objective way, but every time you need to figure out a way of communicate that, being yourself, but effectively. Otherwise, there's no point. Everything is about efficiency, right? So, being, we had a conversation the other day that was interesting about, perseverance versus stubbornness, right?
Persistence
versus stubbornness.
I remember that specific, and then you go ahead, bro.
And my explanation to you of how I saw those two as not being mutually interchangeable is because although both mean getting from A to B, the stubborn will insist that there is a path. The persistent will learn different ways to get from A to B.
Oh, dude.
So as you grow and you become more aware, that's the mentality of the persistent. when you decide that there's only one way that you can react and that person really needs to understand it that way, you're being the stubborn because you have that path set in stone.
That you just might have just saved my life. No, seriously, because this has been the puzzle that I am trying to solve. I am just not communicating effectively, even when I feel like what I am saying could be right. So that begs the question: How do I coddle somebody to communicate? What is the art of communication?
You're asking the wrong person. Man, I've hit so many walls in my life because of communication that you have no idea. But I've learned a lot too.
Please share, man.
I mean, seriously, we were laughing, but, communication can be a fine line between a friend and an enemy. And I've lost friends because I was not aware enough. I didn't communicate effectively. And I've always been kind of spoiled, and thinking that, I know the right things, I have the answer to things, and basically expecting that people will understand and sit and nod to everything.
That's what you and I have in common.
Growing up doing that and insisting on that cost me friendships, and cost me, I've had a lot of work-related conflicts that I could have avoided or could have handled it much more effectively, and could have spared me from some big consequences,
By the suppression, what price do you have to pay for the effectiveness? Could that be the suppression of your own emotions?
No, but sometimes. So, the example you brought, it sounds like it's a recurring thing, right? So, sometimes you want a recurring thing not to recur. Or sometimes,
please stop.
Or sometimes it's not just a recurring thing, but you wish you didn't have to explain it twice, right? So sometimes you send an email, you hope that email will be clear enough so that nobody will send you an email back asking exactly what's in the email, right? But for you, it might be clear what's in the email, but sometimes you didn't convey the message. And then you're gonna start having those emails back. And then what do? You start answering those emails. That's all lost time. We waste a lot of time reading and writing emails. I do. And the more effective the communication is, the less emails you have to go through.
More time.
And more time you have for other things. So this is one of the benefits. The benefits of effective communication is time, because time is the only thing that you will never have back, and you can never make. You can make money, but you cannot make time. Every second that we're spending here, we're never gonna get it back.
Hold that thought. Time. We're literally spending time here. Okay. How do we have to approach? What is the right attitude towards time? Is it, or do I have to approach it with urgency? Do I have to approach it with occupancy? Do I have to approach it with efficiency? What is the right attitude towards time?
I mean, that's a subjective question.
It's subjective. It's subjective.
And
yeah, of course.
And it's probably a personal even question. What people think it's the right way of dealing with time. You may.
What is yours?
So nowadays, for me, is when I look back in the day, at the end of the day, for example, and I have at least 3 things that I spent time on that were useful to me or positive in some way, right? And then when I think of it, it's like, the more I can occupy and the more I can have these experiences that are positive, that are pushing me, that's how I want to handle time. I want to have more time for all of these things that are positive. But then, is like what is it that is positive? And that's a question that some parents may say that playing with their kids is lame. Other parents will say I would die to just play with my kids all day, and sometimes you just want to have like that, Tuesday evening, you're super tired, but then your kids come so sweet, you start playing and then you see them being creative and you enter like in their creativity, and this is like the time that you used it effectively, and
You didn't plan for it though.
but it's something that you can think of, because if I wasn't doing that, I would probably be on my phone. How many times do I remember the times that I sat down and looking over my phone? You don't remember those. That's a lost time. And the same thing with email. Sometimes you remember the time that you spent on an email because you had to spend a whole lot of time on that email. But my point is that how can I use more of my time to these things that I can remember? Because at the end of the day, as you grow older, all you want to have is stories to remember and to tell and to share, right? It's about stories. So if you can put more stories in the same amount of time.
So it's all about being able to reference moments. Moments here being the times that distinguish themselves from other times. So perhaps our whole journey in life is to create an abundance, is to create more moments, which makes our lives more bountiful. Might that be a way you would put it? What you're trying to say? Create the moments that create the feelings, that create the memories, that create.
So I mean,
It's too simple. I know.
No. But it is, and I have a hard time with that. I realize how much I waste my time, and how I wish I could do differently. So, the weekend before last, which I told you, we thought it was gonna rain, and then it ended up like having like pretty great weather, and I managed to do so many different activities with my kids on that weekend, which we would otherwise probably had stayed home because there's nowhere to go indoors nowadays. It turned out to be a weekend where I remember all those events, fondly, and I say, okay, that was a good use of my time, even if you're tired sometimes, or, something at work, you thought of something, you put something together, or you write a paper, finish a paper, or have a new project, and those discussions that you have, then you make your day productive. And when you see, I could accomplish all these things, and then you still went home, had the time to play with your kids, read some books, wake up in the morning, go to the gym. So I want to do that, but also to a point of not burning myself out, right? And I also want to sleep, right? And I know that it's pretty cliche, as you grow older, it's amazing how you start like feeling, the seconds, going through your fingers,
You're only 35.
Yeah, but I mean, you will see after you turn.
No, 30, I feel it already. It's not like that. I know exactly what it is that you're talking about. But I guess you.
I started working out with you. I was 31. Been 4 years, and all of a sudden I went from like a recent 30, and now I'm mid 30s. And it was for the first time in my 30s that.
Let's hold this idea for a while. There's been a lot that you have said, right? But I want to address this particular point first. That is, you invoke the notion of change. Okay, change as being a catalyst for creating moments. That's essentially what you were trying to say. Like, I broke the monotony of what I would have with my children. And because I did that, I've created an experience that's different from the norm. And now that particular experience is sticking. So do we have to actively pursue change in our quest for happiness? Because in our quest for happiness, we're trying to create these moments which we're going to remember and be able to tell these stories. And sometimes if you don't do anything about those things, that they're not going to change. So the only action that you can have pretty much to have the feeling that you want to feel, which is going to make you who you feel like you want to be, that particular action is to get out there in the world and effect change. Well, how do you feel about that?
I mean, it's a very interesting topic, and actually I spent most of my last year debating internally, with the concept of, happiness, You know.
Bro, you and me both.
And you know,
First off, you just mentioned the big word. And I'm not just going to let it pass. I feel like it's something we have to talk about because all of these things that we're talking about, change moments, they're all subsets of happiness, which is the ultimate thing that we're trying to attain. Yes?
okay.
Cool. So then happiness seems to be the problem that we're all trying to solve. It seems to be the one puzzle that everyone is trying to piece together. We're essentially trying to lay the edges of this particular puzzle of happiness. And between that, we find, in order to be happy, I might have to be able to be more aware, to use your own words, right? I might want to have these moments, etc. So, do we need a definition of happiness?
So I don't think that there is a consensus, and actually,
No matter how subjective it is, there's still the underlying idea that should apply to everyone who's attaining this particular thing, right?
Okay, I do have an idea of happiness, after like doing a lot of thought, and I did some reading. Really, I went to the dictionary and asked the dictionary and what happiness is, and the interesting thing about the dictionary definition is that they essentially equate happiness with contentment, and it's really interesting because
those are antithetical. It cannot be.
No.
I feel that way. At least go ahead.
So the way at first content, I think that nowadays has a more negative connotation than it did before. But ultimately, contentment means that you're satisfied with something. Something, so that you don't need anything else. That thing is enough. So you're content with that, right? And I think that the way that you're saying is that it means you've settled, right? You're not.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the ultimate contentment has to be change.
So that's why I use a different word for it, right? Which is fulfillment.
I was thought about that word today.
Yeah,
we're pulling these words. So yeah, go ahead. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So ultimately, the way that I see happiness, and by no means is a recipe, but is a combination of the both. So when we study turbulence and fluid mechanics, I told you that it's something absolutely unpredictable, to actually model, the position of the particles. But we do have an average of it, right? So when we characterize turbulence, we usually have, a line, an average line, and then you have the noise. And what I see is that the contentment is that average line that keeps you on that, stage of life that you like. But the noise is the up and down of the things that you achieve in a shorter period of time.
Oh, dude, that's awesome.
So like, let's say you decide that, today I'm gonna do 150 push-ups on one go. That's a very small one, but it's a small fulfillment. It's one of those like tops. On the noise, you're going all the way to the, and sometimes you're feeling low. You go all the way low, and then you realize that you need a new challenge. And those are the ones that you can actually say, I crossed the finish line. With the contentment, there's no finish line. The finish line is death. That's when everything ends, right? But you can always keep increasing, but it's not finish line. And that's why a lot of people who have this mentality that they have to cross a finish line all the time. And I'm not gonna lie, I have been like that a lot, and I've always been waiting for that finish line to cross. And every time you cross, you realize that you have a much bigger mountain in front of you, right? So, but how do you do that? How do you pursue those mountains and still feeling okay? And that's the content piece. So you need both. That's how I see it. And if I were to define happiness in a broad term, that would be the combination of both, and not just one or the other. It's happiness is very, very complex, and this is how I see it today. And maybe I will change my mind, but ultimately that's how I feel about happiness. And when I the reality is that for most of my life, the things that I have built and I'm standing on, which the platform that is holding you up is what makes you content or not, and that is pretty solid. Now I need to be able to better match that.
Is that your achievements?
No.
Well, what is it? Things that you're. What are the things that you're standing on?
Well, so the things that I've been building over time, but
what is that?
No, everything, from.
So it's essentially just a record of the times that you have lived. Is it
right? But the things the things that I stand on, that I'm I feel solid, that keep me up, and I'm not falling behind. Have the kids, they're healthy. I'm not. Fortunately, my family and I were not financially anxious. We have like an amazing house. We live like in a great neighborhood. We have access to education. We think progressively, and all these
things. Are those your baseline contentments? Those things, are those the content that you've talked about?
But they are on average, right?
You're right.
And then the small noises are the intermediate achievements that you're just like when I got my PhD. My daughter was born, and then we bought a house, and then you do these things, but then collectively you can sit on it, but you still need other things, right? I decided right after I finished my PhD, that's when I decided to make a huge change in my life, which was really taking care of my physical health. Because for 13 years, I was a heavy smoker. During my PhD, I couldn't do any physical activity. And then I decided to make a big change, right? And then I met you, and then we started working out. There was never a finish line, but it's something that I progressively did and start building on it. Now it's a habit. It's part of my life. You helped me achieve that big piece of, a big strong pillar that I can step on right now, because I'm really confident about what I'm doing, in terms of taking care of my physical health, right? So there were intermediate achievements, or like on Monday, I was able to do
that. Was good, bro.
It was the first time I was able to do that lift.
I love that.
And then we're like, yeah, you got stronger, and great. That's like a small achievement, but overall,
you needed 1 week though.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding, brother.
But my point is that, what I'm sitting on is not on that achievement. I'm sitting on the
journey that you undertook.
Yeah, the whole thing that makes me look how I look now, or feel how I feel now.
So then, so is the ultimate quest, or is the road to happiness? Do you have to build these particular blocks that you stand on? Is it a staircase that you climb? I build this, I can stand on it. Dan is a little healthier. Well, maybe the next piece of it is for him to figure out communication, which is the effective communication is what we're trying to solve. And once we figure that becomes the next layer. It's the perpetual journey for betterment or for steps to stand on. Is that essentially happiness? Because is that path itself the happiness and not necessarily a destination? Is that happiness? Maybe.
But I don't think that's a definition that's universal. That's more how I see it.
That's how you see it.
And by no means I'm here to try to define, but I always wanted to understand, why sometimes, when I look at all these things that I'm standing on, and I still feel down. Sometimes I feel depressed. What is going on? And you still have all those things. But, especially during this COVID time, I've been thinking, thank goodness I actually, I can't put food on the table.
Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry to...
No.
Why would you feel depressed about the things that you say you can stand on? Unless, of course... You don't believe those things matter in the long run. For example,
it's not about the things that you're standing on. You're simply just, in general, you're not feeling fulfilled. And that's what I'm saying, that sometimes we spend too much time not feeling fulfilled, and that's why we need.
So what is the ingredient for fulfillment?
The noise. So you need to, that's when you cause the change. When you, for example, for me, something like coming over here tonight, and talking to you, was something that really disrupted my week, because I've never done something like that. First of all, I've never done anything like this. And also, since I had kids, I never,
able to do that.
Able to leave the house, on a weekday in the evening. I've never done that, So this is like the type of experience that, caused noise and makes me think, and, collectively, these are sometimes small noises, sometimes they're big noises, right? For example, getting a PhD is a big noise. But at the end of the day, defending the thesis is just a moment, right? But the knowledge acquired, the ability to do research, my scientific thinking, so on and so forth, is something that's been established. Now it's something that I can more and use that to leapfrog onto different things. And I talking amateur philosophy here, to back into practice my guitar or whatever, So, yeah. But again, it's by no means I'm trying to make a sweeping statement. I used to be a lot like that, and now I'm starting to understand how different people are.
Well, yeah. I mean, at least you're talking to me, and for me, the way you put it, I know for sure it's definitely going to help my life. I've definitely gained a new perspective that I've never seen before. So for me, it's blessed my life. Producer, how did that make you feel, bro?
You know what? You guys have been touching on some very interesting topics this evening.
Yeah.
I love. It's pretty good.
He's the judge. He keeps us honest. He makes sure that, what I'm saying, if I need a third opinion to see. But how do you feel about, give us input on how you feel about what Dan said about the quest for happiness and having this contentness, and the noises are the things that really create the meaning that you're looking for. Along those lines, how did that make you feel? I felt like that description was almost perfect. I'm like, that's how I'm living my life tomorrow.
Right. Well, please don't. No, I can honestly say it was definitely a perfect description, because a lot of the things that you did say, I was feeling it. You know, about the accomplishes in life and stuff like that. I mean, and making time and all that. You know, and wasting time.
Oh man.
I mean, that part hit me very hard, because then I started thinking about, simple things like you said, the little moments you spend with your child versus the time when you're on your phone just wasting time. And then I think about these things and I'm like, wow, I do a lot of time wasting rather than utilizing my time efficiently and effectively. So that hit me very hard when you guys were talking there. But
cool, bro.
And the quest for happiness and everything, I mean, you guys were just hitting the nail right on the head, right on point. I love it.
You're a wonderful guest, brother.
So I have to agree, and please, I mean, don't. I'm not starting a cult here. You don't have to follow.
No. I'm not looking at you as a cult leader. I'm looking at you as.
Please don't.
No. I'm not looking at it like that. I'm looking at it as a brother who is on a similar quest that I am on, and I can communicate with you almost exactly, and I can feel the emotions that you feel because I relate. Right? Those things are things I look at in my life. I question myself as a parent and how I'm spending my time and how you're even creating experiences for your child. And if you don't do it, do you have to feel shitty about yourself, or because that weekend you were tired, you couldn't take her out here? Are you, what I'm saying? And I have to question my relationships with other people, and I have to know what is it that's going to make me essentially. What is it that's going to quiet the voice in my head that says you're wasting your time? Because when you're wasting time, you hear it.
Yeah.
There's a voice that says, really? Right?
But, you can easily get distracted, and the whole awareness thing is if you can, start keeping tabs and being aware all the time that you're wasting your time, you might be able to actually work on it. And, it does make a difference. I waste a lot of my time, and sometimes, I just from the corner of my eye, I notice something, because my kids now are going nuts, but they're super creative. So they're doing something absolutely insane, and then from the corner of my eye, it catches me, and then I looked at it, and sometimes I look for just a couple of seconds. Those couple of seconds were much bigger and much more important in my life than all those 15 minutes that I was just scrolling up and down, on a Facebook or reading a very depressing news, because nowadays reading news, in my opinion, it is a waste of time. It's we can almost predict what they're going to say.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about, because what brings that charge? What is that electricity that the news has, right? And that is the fact that we feel very strongly about government. Believe it or not, right? The government seems to be the one trigger that when you pull polarizes people immediately, right? So, what is it about? Because it doesn't make that idea doesn't make sense to me. What is it about us that we have an undying allegiance for government, or what is it? How are we brainwashed or misinformed, or what is it?
I mean, it's, it's a necessary evil, because the truth is that although Homo sapiens we live in society, but like any any animal that lives in society, there's always leaders, right? Because you have to set references and guide, right, in order to have a more orderly and civil society.
Correct.
Right. And
what is the benefit of having a civil society? Is that just basically efficiency of
yes,
Yeah.
because then
mutual efficiencies? Yeah.
you can simply go to the store, purchase your steak. You don't have to kill another guy because he was able to gun down your deer, right? So, and and such that most people won't come and spit at your face, just because they wanted to, So there is a social agreement, like, okay, let's respect that there are boundaries, right? And what is the price? The price is having to be polite, right? So we have a courteous way that makes communication more efficient, because the truth is that when we the way that we behave it will have a necessary impact on the outcomes of your request, right? So if you're rude, at a store, it's going to take a lot longer. You can't get discounts, right? Or the person will be nasty back at you. So this is just an example, but the idea of a civil society is that we can go by our day without having to really worry about other people really crossing the line. Not that people don't, and that's why we have laws.
So government
right?
has the control.
Yeah. So you say, okay, you cross the line. Now you're gonna pay the penalty. Sometimes it's just a fine. Sometimes you go to jail. Sometimes unfortunately, there's death penalty, right, in this country. But at the end of the day, that's it. And then you can mind your business. You can buy your house. You can you can do your work, and there's an agreement that piece of land is where you live. Nobody gets to get in your house, right? So that's a benefit. Because if you didn't have anything to establish that, anybody can go anywhere.
So make the extension.
You cannot claim anything, right?
Make the extension to the necessitation of government. From what you're saying, make
right.
that extension.
Because the government will basically set the rules. It will decide how the rules will be enforced.
Must it be consensus? Because amongst the population.
No, and that's the thing. How can you have consensus with people? There's no consensus, and that's why,
No, of course. Let's just say our criteria for consensus is majority, right? So.
I really don't agree with that, because we can clearly see that. I mean, if you have like a 51 to 49%, they are
it's a push. It's a push.
equally strong in Russia. Right, It's just.
But how do you break that? How do you break that stalemate?
No, you don't, and that's the thing. The way I see it so far, we haven't been able to craft anything better than democracy, and democracy still sucks, because democracy allows, especially a free democracy that we supposedly have in this country, right? Because it gives you so much freedom of speech that you can incite hate and distribute hate in such way, like forest on fire, and make that a political base, and they all of a sudden can govern the country. It's so easy, and that's why when you go to dictatorships,
you can't check that. You
right?
can't check that using laws. You can't check that impulse.
No, you can't, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Democracy is the best thing that has happened, because sometimes we're going to have like an extremely right-wing leader, but we know that the pendulum will go back. We do have the chance to change, right? As long as we vote, right? So we do have a chance to change, but it doesn't mean that it works out well, right? Or either people don't do their jobs, or even if they do, we put somebody there that cannot effectively govern, right? The government itself, that's one thing that I agree with Republicans, is that the government is very, very messy, right? So the bigger and more people, it can get more complicated if you don't streamline the process, right? But it doesn't mean that it can't be efficient. It's just that some agencies in the government, in my opinion, they're just created to put bureaucracy.
So
right?
how do we guarantee the efficiency of government? Is that simply information of the people?
I'm not a political scientist. I'm not gonna, but as far as I've only.
You don't have to be a political scientist to express your opinion on a matter that affects your life.
No, but that's the thing. I don't have like the background. I haven't read a lot about it. It's really from personal experience.
How do you feel about it? Not necessarily how do you feel about it. For me, because that matters. Ultimately, not everyone can be a political scientist, but we need to have we need to have interest in our political affairs. So how are we able to navigate our own emotions? How are we able to express how we really feel as it relates to how we live our lives? We have to find a way.
Yeah. I don't know, honestly.
Me neither.
But, like I said, from my own experience, I've only lived in countries that are, democracies.
Right.
In this country, and the biggest difference between the United States and Brazil is that, in Brazil, the democracy is a lot younger, right? We had, military dictatorship, for 20 years, from 60s to the 80s. So we've reestablished democracy really at, late 80s. And it's such a bureaucratic system that it's so easy to corrupt, but on the other hand, what I wanted to first say is that I've seen, that democracy work in a sense that I've seen throughout my life different types of leaders. They were put there, and some of them, they did good things no matter which party or stuff. But what I saw was the ability to make that change, and I think that's why democracy is great, because it still gives you the ability to change. But a bureaucratic and corrupt system can easily get spoiled, and that's what we're afraid in Brazil, right? Here, although I'm worried about what can happen, the democracy is so much stronger. It's just in comparison, we do have, even though it's pretty suspicious, but we still have a stronger system of accountability.
Yeah, because you're going to have democracies having ingredients of bureaucracy. And that is what you try to avoid.
Yeah.
But democracy sometimes provides just that tolerable gap.
Yeah.
For that. And in that case, what do you do about it? Because now the people who are supposed to check the government have now become fanatics. And the system has been completely polarized. So instead of looking at government, I feel like the only way to look at government is with skepticism. That is the only way to look at government, because it matters so much. But if we don't look at it like that, and we look at government as if it was a sports team, then we're totally missing the point. And I'm afraid that is what's happening, man. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially as it relates to this country.
Yeah. We are it's interesting because we are, literally living a piece of history that is going to have a whole chapter in future history books in schools. It's going to be like, or maybe entire books.
It's contemporary with us, so we don't even know that. We don't feel that.
Exactly. So why, when you're going through it, you don't understand. And this is why the scary part is, every time in history, especially in the 20th century, all those countries that went through some sort of a coup, that they had like a dictatorship, people didn't really understand. They were living it, but they couldn't look from afar and understand the magnitude and the danger of that thing. because it's always slow, right? It's a little bit every day, and every day it starts feeling normal again. And this is what the problem what I am afraid the most is that in the past 4 years that's what's been going on.
Of course
Well,
it is.
something that we would hear 4 years ago we would be absolutely outraged.
Live it.
Now it's so normal that your brain is already, and that's in my opinion is the strategy.
Yeah, that's straight
That's
out of
the
the autocrats
strategy.
playbook.
It's like
It's very effective.
it's so effective, and we get so. I mean, the normalization is tricky.
So how do we knowing that democracy leaves a side door open for such a thing, how do we seal that? I'm feeling like information is absolutely a tool to use, and actually, Dan, you being able to articulate it just like you have completely, and I hope changed somebody's mindset about what government is supposed to be. Because I feel like you're right, and I feel like if you made the statement like that, a lot of people would be like, "Hey, you know what? He's right. You didn't say anything that was crazy. You didn't say anything that had a bias to it." And ultimately, if we're trying to rulership, or is that even a word? Whatever it is, governing people, isn't it about having laws and things that have as little bias as you possibly can, just so everyone can actually realize their full potential? Shouldn't that be the mission statement of a government? Perhaps. Yeah, that's sometimes that's good enough. I've realized that sometimes in life, certainty is very rare. That perhaps might just be the best that you can do.
Because and I think that the problem with the current system is what you said, all the loopholes. But what is worse is the hypocrisy, is the criticism of these loopholes that are so well utilized by those who criticize them, right? Because these loopholes allow for you to have those shady and other players that don't need to be directly involved in the government, but they are really dealing the cards. And the only way to do that is through those cracks, right? So all the lobbying that, that exists in Congress and these things. And one way, I don't know if it would work, but in my mind, in theory, I think that, the socialization of education and health is one way to make it more transparent and eliminate some of these loopholes where it allows people profiting out.
Why those things? Is it because it's applicable to this particular system, or overall in democracy you have to?
Because these two, first of all, they should be a right. Not, it's everybody has the right to those things. You cannot deny any of those.
Yes, you may.
But no, I think that this is part of the contract. That we have
with whom?
Those things. But
the contract with whom?
But no, that's the social contract. The contract that we were talking about, like.
Everyone sort of agrees to that. Everyone kind of believes, we ought to be educated and we ought to have good health, because after all, our livelihood depends on those very factors. But who do we have this agreement with?
Well, not us. What do I mean? Disagreement with?
No, this agreement that education and health are rights. Who do we have this agreement with? Why should we believe they're rights? I agree with you because it hits you emotionally. You should feel like you should have those things.
Especially health. I mean, we know that last week I had that thing on my toe.
Of course.
That basically ruined my week. Not only my ability.
Why should the rest of society give a fuck about you?
But no, because it's about giving a fuck about everyone. Everybody should be able to feel normal, because anything that physically happens, or if you're mentally ill, you're not gonna
affects everybody. Why should everyone care though? That's what I'm trying to say. Because unless everyone actually cares and the betterment of Dan, it's going to be very much harder for me to invest in something that is better for Dan. How do you transform people to have that mindset at all times?
Because by making other people better, I can be more effective.
People don't see it that way, Dan.
But-
Not in real life. People don't see it that way. So it comes back to my point of educating people. That seems for me to be and you mentioned education as one of your pivotal points. Educating people to see this fact, because all right, not seeing that political parties depend on people not seeing that particular realization. Some political parties do rely on people being ignorant for them to be able to be empowered.
Exactly.
So,
but that's exactly my point, because once you have to guarantee equal education, you're going to invest exactly the same thing on every school in this country, equally distributed, or at least proportional to the number of students.
correct.
Right? Equally, right? And not, I mean, a friend of mine said something the other day that I never thought of, and it was, it's an interesting thought, how schools are funded by property tax. Property tax, a lot of the school funding is actually funded by property tax. And this, what does that mean? It means that richer neighborhoods can get more funds for their schools. So even like public schools is entrained in some of these cracks that enables this widening of the social gap, right? So these are small things, and also like having private schools that only the very elite can attend, right? But if we could have a system that is universally, everybody has the same access to education and health, you kind of eliminate some of those cracks.
Is that the way to level the playing field?
Yeah.
You know what they call it?
Mm.
You know the word. Socialism.
No, but I mean, yes. These are two socialist ideas that I do abide to.
But the funny thing is, it comes back to my point of educating people, because people believe that. I agree that you're not saying anything that's highly controversial.
No, apparently it is. And Congress is very controversial.
Of course, because we are saying that democracy and socialism are completely separate ideas, and democracy there's no place where those two intersect. I feel like to have a strong democracy, having a pillar of education and healthcare is absolutely essential. So why is it that when we say that, some political parties may even want to trigger other people to say, oh, that's socialism, and most people don't even know what it really entails. But because that word automatically has a negative connotation in our minds, we go apeshit and say and feel as though that's about to be the number one thing that threatens us. How do we change that? I know you're gonna say you don't know, but
I mean, it's interesting, and it's very complex, right? It's like if you were to talk about, I guess that socialism now has been blended with communism, right? And I think that's how the right wing created the narrative.
Differentiate them for us. I don't know personally if I could
well,
draw that contrast.
A socialism, in the socialism, it's not my understanding. I mean, again, not a social scientist here. But the socialism doesn't it doesn't forbid social classes, that and you can have a socially capitalist society. You can still have a capitalist economy. In the communism, you have all the means owned by the state. So, which means that all your mining, all your manufacturing, and everything. And if you go to North Korea, that would be more in line with a communist regime, but also probably not. It's if you look back at the definitions that the thinkers and philosophers of 19th century, of communism, is probably not what North Korea does or what Soviet Union was. But ultimately, as far as economy goes, in a communist society, you have all the means owned by everyone, essentially, right? So it's the the workers' dictatorship.
Because that's what I didn't
Whatever.
understand about communism. Because I was like, let me read about it. And then when you read about it, it sounds like, wait, it's something that is ultimately for the people. But when we think about communist societies, so I guess the theory and the practice of it are very.
Yeah. So one example in Brazil, our former president Lula, which is very controversial. There has been several accusations. He was actually in jail and so on and so forth. But when he was elected as the communist guy, right? I mean, and
Meaning.
I mean,
that
he was the head of the Workers' Party. He was one of the founders, so on and so forth. And they were a lot more rooted in the communist ideas. But when he was elected president, he was still elected to a social democracy in which we have a capitalist economy. That never changed, right? Just because he has social ideas. And some of the things that happened during his term and his successor, which was also from Workers' Party, was basically leveling the playing field. So they got a lot of people out of misery, they created a unified health system, which actually now in Brazil we have a much better universal health care, although there are a lot of bad hospitals. But there is this universal health system that is absolutely integrated in the whole country, and you don't really need. I mean, if you don't have insurance, you will be treated. Sometimes it may take time. It's not like Europe that you're gonna get your surgery the next day.
It's better than what it used to be, bro. Yeah.
But and this was already part, universal healthcare in Brazil even before then. But he worked a lot, to improve that, and he also worked a lot, in creating quotas, so on and so forth. And I mean, all the programs that has a lot, that they have a lot of debate. There are a lot of pros and cons. A lot of people, but I think at the end of the day, what he did was not only providing more access to health and education to the very lower class, but also ability to participate in the economy. So they started traveling. He made sure that plane tickets were accessible, so people from poorer areas could actually travel somewhere in the country, and that thing happened a lot. And what he did ultimately was make a very, very strong and active capitalist economy, even though he had socialist
the principles,
ideas.
Was socialist. Yeah.
Yes, and this is how I differentiate, when you call like a socialist society, and people equate that necessarily to to Russia or to North Korea,
Which kind of idea?
No, I think that
communist, or what do you mean?
Yeah, the communist. But
okay.
what I'm saying that a lot of people equate the two.
Correct.
They think that this is the the fallacy that parents think that if you smoke a cigarette, that's going to lead you to heavy drugs, right? So if you start doing implementing social programs, we're going to end up being like Russia,
so the problem seems to be the discretization of philosophical government ideas, right? Perhaps there isn't no pure democracy, or there isn't any pure communism or socialism, etc.
Maybe in the strict sense of the word, it might not. Yeah.
It might not necessarily be, and somewhere in the middle where we might optimize society, perhaps. I guess for today that's a good answer. We've definitely made strides in the way. I definitely understand a little bit more, and you definitely taught me something that I can take with me and say,
No, and I mean, and again, it's like it's about. And I think that some people align a lot with only just like one set of ideas and roads to take, or the other. I think that most of it, but I can appreciate, some other thoughts and some other ways of doing it, because obviously what we're doing still not fully efficient, but there are ways that I believe that can be better.
Life basically just has a lot of noise.
Yeah. But let's make sure that it's good noise, right? Not bad noise. Right? You want to have more peaks than valleys. Although you're going to have a valley, but let's hope that the valley is not as intense as as the peaks. Right?
So that's basically the control. That management is essentially, if I'm taking anything with me today that's going to help me identify who I am, which is still the ultimate question you and I are trying to answer today, is going to be the awareness that, hey, this path that you're pursuing has room for changes, has room for peaks and valleys, and all of that stuff. But ultimately there's an average path. Ultimately there's some carved path that when you stay on leads to your growth. If I take that with me home tonight as a pursuit of who I am, I think I'm very comfortable with that. And I have to thank you for being able to articulate that. It has enriched my life. Okay. So, all right, cool. We've closed that chapter. Dan, you have been a brilliant host, and if anybody's watching from home, I hope you guys are feeling the way I'm feeling. I'm gonna let this guy go home because he has children. How they say, bro?
Churn.
And he got to get up early in the morning. But I'm gonna ask you. We're gonna talk about one last thing.
Okay.
And I know that you're a scientist, man, and when you talk about science and you talk about your passions. Last time you were telling me about the Lattice-Boltzmann equation. So no, those are those equations?
Lattice-Boltzmann method.
The Lattice-Boltzmann. So yeah, to solve the Navier-Stokes equation, right?
Well, it's an alternative to.
An alternative to the passion in your eyes as you were talking about those things, dude.
And by the way, I know nothing about Lattice-Boltzmann yet. I'm in the process.
You're in the process. Okay, what is it about it that is exciting you about that, man?
I mean, so.
What is the Navier-Stokes equation? What are they about?
The Navier-Stokes equation?
Yeah, tell us about the Navier-Stokes
They
equation.
basically they fully describe the fluid motion.
Mm-hmm.
So in fluid mechanics, you have a set of Navier-Stokes equations that include the conservation of momentum, conservation of energy, and conservation of continuity. And ultimately,
conservation of continuity. Also,
yes.
you have to. That's probably how you distinguish fluids from. Is that how?
No, conservation of continuity is basically conservation of a mass flow. So if you have a mass flow entering the tube and is in steady state, you need to have mass coming out. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, you're accumulating mass in that.
Of course.
In that tank, right? And that can be the case. And that's why the Navier-Stokes equations is a full description of the fluid motion in space and time. Right, but these equations they are laid out in what we call partial differential equations. That these are equations that have no analytical solution, right? So you have to solve it numerically, and that's why we have nowadays we have fantastic computational fluid dynamics solvers, to basically solve the Navier-Stokes equations numerically.
Approximate.
Yeah. I mean, it's numerical approximation, right? So you're solving, and then you give the machine a residual in which you're satisfied with, and fine. But this is still computationally intensive, right? And the whole thing that we were talking about, Lattice-Boltzmann, is a different way to approach the fluid motion without implicitly having to iteratively solve, the Navier-Stokes equation. It's about distribution functions of momentum. And I mean, I'm not going to dive into it because, like I said, I'm not an expert. But so the Navier-Stokes equations is the macro scale when you're looking at a fluid as a whole, like a continuum, right? And then we have molecular dynamics. That's when you do the simulation on a molecular level, right? The molecular dynamics might be useful for small understanding, but you cannot really do that for a cup of water. The amount of molecules in a cup of water for you to simulate and track, it's computationally also very intensive. So that's the molecular scale. And there's something that we call the mesoscale, which is where the Lattice-Boltzmann lies at. So
what is the mesoscale again?
The mesoscale is in between, the macro scale and the molecular scale.
Oh, gotcha.
And it brings benefits from both sides. Because what is the benefit of the molecular one, which we can explicitly tell the trajectory of that one.
There has to be a lot of iterations.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, but the thing is, solving on a molecular level is too much, and solving iteratively the partial differential equation is also painful. So the mesoscale, which is the Lattice-Boltzmann,
somewhere in between,
is something that can provide both accuracy and speed. And why does that matter? You know, especially in our group, we do a lot of design optimization, and we want to explore, you know, let's say thousands of different designs to find which are the best ones, right? And then when we rely on these tools, they consume a lot of computational power and a lot of your time, right? So if you have a more effective way, you know, to get the same results in a reduced amount of time, you're being more effective.
So does the lattice boltzmann method afford you that? Is that what that's about?
That's what excites me. It's about time efficiency. I do love CFD.
That seems like your whole life, bro. Your whole life is about trying to be efficient.
I guess, yeah.
You just want to work the numbers, man.
But anyways, you know, so that was what that thing is all about. So I'm trying to, you know, learn a little bit about that. So we can have that in my toolkit. Yeah.
Captain Man.
Dude,
I love you, brother. Thank you so much for blessing me with this whole session of knowledge, and come by sometime, man. Just educate us. I hope you guys' lives were just enriched as much as mine was by talking to my man Daniel Bachelor. He is interested. He talked about government. He talked about trying to find yourself. He gave us a little bit of science at the end. If you could get a message out of this whole thing, I have to tell you, it's a phrase that my friends and I coined, right? We call it "fuck around and find out."
Yeah.
It's just in life sometimes you just gotta tweak things, turn a knob, make a move, and get out of your comfort zone just so you can know what's on the other end.
Yes.
And then, Dan, you just triggered all of that in me, man. So I really appreciate it, brother, man. I'm gonna see you at the gym on Friday morning.
I do appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you so much. We made what? I made 3 moves. You made 2, and you made 3 as well.
I was waiting for it.
That was my turn. I blew it, man. My bad.
Conversation is good.
We'll play this game, okay? Appreciate you, brother. Have a good evening, all right?
You too, man.
Ooh.
Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.